Hey, this is Brent Ingersoll, and you are listening to the Speaking of podcast. Today, I sit down with a friend of mine named Tia Bailey. He is an artist known as One8tea. He's a rapper here on the East Coast of Canada. Fantastic artist, fantastic rapper with an incredible story, and he's just an incredible guy, and I have a great conversation with him today. I know you're going to enjoy it. Before we jump into that, I just want to say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everybody. I want to thank you for journeying along with me this year. It's been a ride. It's been a journey. We've had a ton of fun, and it's been a great experience to build this podcast. And I'm excited to get into a whole new season of talks and conversations beginning in January. And so this is the last episode of 2020. And I just want to thank you for being part of it. And I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. And I'm excited to get back into a new season in the new year. But today, hey, our last episode of 2020, this is my conversation with Tia Bailey. Check it out. Well, cool, man. It is awesome to have you on. Look, I wanted to get just your story. I've been around Atlantic Canada long enough and in church circles long enough to we've met a few times, familiar with your ministry and your music, and have picked up bits and pieces of your story, but I've never actually heard it. I've never actually heard your testimony, never actually heard I know you, there was a time when you're a teen challenge, and I want to hear the whole, give me the 180, the full 360 on 180.
Yeah.
In the story.
Yeah, no, I grew up in Halifax. And so, I was raised by my grandparents, for the most part. I grew up in a community, North End Halifax. So it's a predominantly Black community. And so just all the stuff that comes with that, I was privy to and a part of. The cool thing I always like to note, because a lot of times people look at some of the things that we do and think that we must have come from, good Christian stock, if you will, or
right,
or whatever. Well, I actually had both sides in my life growing up. So on my mother's side of the family, which is the grandparents that raised me, it was, you go to church every Sunday. If from the time you can walk, you have to join the children's choir, or that's how you pay for your meals. you sing in the children's choir at the church.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was involved in that. But then on my father's side of the family, my grandmother on that side had 9 sons, just boys. And their dynamic was very, very different. They loved each other seriously and hard. However, there wasn't a godly factor in there outside of their mother.
Right.
And so growing up, I got to see both sides of those things. And I'm always very honest about how that impacted me, because, I've got these drug dealing uncles and pimping uncles and all of that. And then I've got this Christian bunch of people that I see every Sunday.
Right.
And the two things weren't gelling for me the way that they should have, I guess, if that makes sense. So I remember being 7 years old. And it's crazy that this is the one story that still to this day always sticks out to me. But I remember being 7 years old, and I was in the foyer of our church, and I heard one lady, an older lady, go up to a younger lady, and she said to her, you shouldn't have been in the club last night. And even at 7 years old, that struck me as, well, how would she know she was in the club last night?
Right.
Unless she was either in the club last night or talking about it. Right. Yeah. And it just, even as a kid, it rubbed me wrong. It really did. Because it wasn't a, hey, are you okay?
Right.
Maybe it was, almost like, what are you doing here? I know you just got home.
Right. Right.
And I read that quick. And so that really messed with me, because on my father's side of the family, no matter what was going on or what they were doing, right or wrong, they always had each other's back, no matter what.
Right.
There's some things we'll address when we get home, but out here,
yeah,
I got your back, yeah. And so as I grew up a little bit, that's what I gravitated to was that side. I had no reason to believe that God wasn't real.
Yep.
I wasn't really feeling his people.
Right. Yeah.
And so I didn't know how to navigate that into a relationship with him without going through his people to get it.
I think that's where, isn't that where so many people, I mean, that's such a common place to get hung up because so many people see, frankly, more of who they, you know, believe God to be, believe Jesus to be in people who aren't even like self-professing Christians. And then
Right.
they get exposed to hypocrisy or legalism, and it sends them in the opposite direction entirely.
Yeah, and so what I saw was this group of men who would all be under the same roof and just loved each other,
Right.
unconditional. I don't care what you did before you got home. Which to me now it's funny because I've told the story and it's funny to me because at the time, without knowing it, that's exactly what my walk with Christ is now. Right? Like I love you regardless. Like you just, but it's crazy sometimes to think about where I learned those values.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So anyway, I when as I was getting older and it was time to start making decisions for myself, I started gravitating to what my uncles and my father would be doing. And so I got involved in a gang in Halifax really young. I was probably about 12 or 13. Wow. And we were stealing cars and selling drugs. That was kind of our thing. The older guys used to kind of work with us a lot, and so yeah, that was kind of my thing, and I kind of grew up in that. That became my focus. I developed we had a close knit group of guys. It's crazy, Pastor. It's a lot of the same values I have now.
Right.
I developed for all the wrong reasons. But anyway, but those relationships were so tight that like we just trusted each other. I knew that these guys were going to have my back. If something went wrong and we had to run, I knew I wasn't running by myself,
Yeah.
So yeah, that was really my childhood, was that.
Well, that's such a huge point, man, you're making, because I think if you grow up in like a religious Christian sort of bubble, your assumption is that all the godliness and the kingdom activities found in here, but the reality is, family is God's idea, loyalty is God's idea, brotherhood is God's idea, and those are like, it's cool that you are seeing those values, and like by the grace of God, honestly, you're in this pretty on the one hand, challenging childhood and difficult situation. By the other hand, like you're telling me there's things God deposited in you.
Oh man.
And then
I wouldn't trade it for anything. And because people ask, like everywhere I go, like I'll share my testimony. People ask me like, so what do you regret the most? And I'm like, nothing. I mean, there's some things that I wish I didn't do.
Yeah,
of course, everybody has that. But I do believe, I believe in the scripture that talks about God working all things out to the good of those who love him and called according to his. I believe that, so I believe that all of those things, like they had to happen for me to be who I am and where I am right now.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so, I mean, you're preaching to people who need to hear that even now, like with 2020, like I'm convinced there's a time, like, the challenges that people have had, if given to God and given enough time, there'll be a time where you look back like, I'm glad that happened. I'm glad it happened.
Yeah.
That's so encouraging to hear. So you're in your teen years, and like what landed you, like, obviously you had a major, not to run with the name, but like you did have a pretty major, like 180 in that. Had a big transition time in your life.
Yeah. So, well, one of the things that was really impactful for me, because I'll get to the Teen Challenge piece real quick.
Sure.
One of the things that I also was, I was good at poetry. And so I kind of flipped that into, because, I didn't want to run around the square yelling poems out because, that just could get me in trouble. So I was like, I got to figure out how to put a beat behind this and use it. Right. And so that's how hip hop became that's how rap became my thing. But yeah, so I remembered, doing that. And as I got a little bit older, I started traveling with that, and doing the music thing. And one of the things that was always prevalent was after parties, free drugs. And so, but I felt like, I feel like now that I was such a functioning person with it, because my whole attitude was, this is part of it. So I handled it a little differently, and it was, it was normal. You do the concert, you go to the after party, people give you all your gifts, and then, you go to the hotel, get up in the morning, go to the next place and do it again.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my routine. And so one of the things that happened was, we would use drugs, and cocaine was my issue. That was my issue drug. And I would use it and get up the next day and do what I had to do in that party context. And so it never grabbed a hold of me then. So fast forward a few years later, I was at work working a job in Dartmouth, and a buddy of mine who I worked with, we had a back shift. So we were working 12 midnight, or no, we were working 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. And our job was to sit in a truck and make sure cars didn't go on the closed bridge.
Wow.
That was our job for 12 hours. When I tell you that it was the cushiest job in the world, we installed DVD players in the truck, in the work trucks, and the owner was okay with it.
That's awesome.
Right. So we were sitting for 12 hours. And so one night he brought some cocaine with him and was like, you want to do some? And I was like, I used to do that every night, and it was cool. It was no big deal. So yeah, we got 12 hours to kill. Let's do it. Mm-hmm. Instantly hooked. That next morning I went home. I didn't sleep. I went straight to I bought more before we left. I had left the job site and went and got more that night. And what I had left with me that morning, I actually took home and went downstairs in the basement and kind of started isolating myself down there instantly. It was quick, man. And so my wife, God bless her, at this point, we had been dating, and we're now married, and she approached me on it and was just like, you gotta figure this out, man. It's funny because I know I glow a little bit whenever I mention her, because the stuff she's been through. I spent our first anniversary, I was in Teen Challenge.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and the fact that we just had our 10th anniversary just this fall, is really it's really much more a testament to who she is than it is about who I am. 100%. But yeah, so anyway, she approached me on it, and I tried to quit because I come from a big family. Family matters to me a lot, And when she approached me on it, I was like, okay, no problem, right? If you're threatening to take my family from me, let's figure it out. I'll be okay. Yeah. So I did, and I quit, but I didn't. I'm a firm believer in the faith-based rehab idea, because of the whole model, the holistic model. People say holistic and they separate God from that when they say that. But for me, that's the most important part of the holistic part. Because I still needed the counselor. I still needed the time away. I still needed all of those things. But I also needed a new default system.
Right.
Because when problems came up, my default system was to go use or go do drugs or go do something I shouldn't be doing. And I needed my default system to become God. And I didn't know that at the time. But that's what it was. And so, when she approached me, they approached me about Teen Challenge because a buddy of mine had already gone through the program. And so it's funny. The way our family works is if you can get Nanny on board with anything, you either do or don't have to do it based off of her decision. Right. So I went to Nan. They came at me with this Teen Challenge thing, and the manual was about that thick, and it had dress codes in it, and 4 days a week you got to wear slacks and a collared shirt and no hats. And I was just like, this ain't gonna work for me. I don't care, I'd rather just go through it. I love my family and all, but this, right? And so I called my grandmother, right, and I'm just like, Nan, I don't think I can do that, And at this point, I had already had a suicide attempt under my belt because my attempt to quit using just forced me into depression quick because I didn't, again, like I said, I didn't have the new default. Mm-hmm. So now when problems came, I just piled them on, right? So I remember the night that I attempted the suicide I just had an argument with my wife. It wasn't even anything major, but it was just a tipping point. I'm done. Right. And so, yeah, when they came to me with that, I called my grandmother and I'm like, Nan, I can't take any more pressure right now. Like, I can't do this program. And I'm crying, like, I'm giving her that cry, like, when your parents mess up the Christmas gift and you need to call grandma to get the right thing, you know what I mean? Like, or you got in trouble for something and you need to make that call and she needs to bail you out. You got kids. I know you know what I'm talking about. And so I called her and I gave her that one. I'm crying on the phone like, Nanny, I don't want to do this program. It's too much. And she gave me what I needed. You know what, baby? You don't have to do that. And I was like, I win. So a couple days later, a buddy of mine who was at the hospital to kind of give me the whole Teen Challenge information, he comes to me and he says, like, listen, man, like, if you can get a pass from, because at this point they have me in the Nova Scotia hospital, is the mental ward in Dartmouth. And so he says, yeah, like, if you can get a pass, I'll take you to church. And I'm like, yeah, man, let's do it. Because I've been going to church even up to this point. Like, I'm still going to church.
Yeah.
Right. And so yeah, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. So let's go. And so I go to church and that Sunday morning and they're talking about doing a food drive for Teen Challenge. It gets worse. So I'm already like, oh man, like I know enough about God to know that I'm about to lose this argument. You know what I mean? Like, something's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I get back to the hospital and like the way that they were talking about it didn't sound as crazy as the manual looked. Like, note to others out there, if you're trying to help somebody, don't hit them with a novel first.
Yeah, no kidding, eh?
Maybe have a conversation.
Isn't that what the church has done though? Like, come full circle on what you're talking about earlier. Like, that's been half the problem with religion has been we hit people with the manual and the do's and the don'ts and not the relational, the love and the trust.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So they were talking about this organization that helps people get their lives on track and looks out for them and all of that. And I'm just like, doesn't sound half bad, but I'm like, I'm still not convinced. Either way, I'm gonna go back to the hospital. I called my grandmother every Sunday afternoon. That's still a rule to this day, right? Every Sunday afternoon I call Nan. So I get on the phone, I call Nan, and I'm like, Nan, you're not going to believe what happened to me this morning. She said, well, you're not going to believe what happened to me. Let me go first.
Uh-oh.
She was at a whole nother church, and they were talking about partnering with the church I was at to get clothing for this food drive for Teen Challenge.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. And she says, honey, it doesn't seem that bad. Like, I think you should give it a chance. It's not. And so now I'm just like, all right, Nan, I don't even want to talk to you anymore today because, like, although I knew I was going to lose the argument, I thought I had a little more fight in me, right? Like, I can string this. I'm not just going to give God that quick. Come on, man. Right? So no joke. It gets deeper still.
Wow.
No joke at all. So I get off the phone with my grandmother, and a little later, I call my mom, and I'm just, Mom, what's going on? How's things? Well, I was in church this morning. My mother was a member at Pastor Leonard's church in Hammond Plains. Yeah. Again, now we're at 3 different churches on this Sunday morning.
Like, I can take a hint. I got it. Yeah.
Right. And Pastor Leonard was talking about this Teen Challenge program. And after the service was over, he came and talked to me about it and said it might be something for you. And I'm just like, all right, I give up. Like, I'll at least listen now. Right. So anyway, I entered the program and that's where, the values that I had learned growing up interceded with who God actually is. Yes. And having that, because I walk into this place and these guys they're meeting me for the first time and just loving on me instantly. And that wasn't about the relationship and the loyalty that I had built up with the guys I grew up with. That was just, these are the same activities, like the same way of being, but it's different, right? And so that was where I learned the difference in, religion and relationship, I guess, if you will, and it really impacted things for me in a huge way. No. And so my life coach, and this is where I'll wrap up that part. My life coach, actually, Mark Pope, I still actually call him coach, man, but my life coach in the program, he had figured out that, I was a big rap fan and that I liked to write and all of that stuff. And so every month in Teen Challenge, you get what's called a contract. And in that contract, you have to do a character quality lesson. You do a little book report. You do a Bible study, and then you'll get a portion of scripture that you're supposed to paraphrase. So basically, put it in your own words so that you can understand it, and you can kind of share it with somebody else. If you learn how to say it your own way, you don't need the book in your hand. You can actually share it. So he figured out that I loved rap music. So what he would do is every month on my contract, he would give me my paraphrase, if you will, would be a portion of scripture, and it would be, all right, write me a verse for this, like write me a song for this or whatever. So for 12 months, because it's a 12-month program, for 12 months every month, I was taking a portion of scripture and writing a song. And so that kind of lit a whole new thing. Right? Like, okay, like this is, because at this point I'd only ever heard Lecrae and I heard Trip Lee, and I was still a little bit amazed at the fact that you could actually even do that, because I was like, they're rapping, man, and they're allowed. Like, this is cool, you know?
Yeah, it's good. Good.
Yeah, so I was still kind of blown away by that, but then he started doing that, and it was special, man. Like, it changed because it gave me an outlet. You know, I communicate best through that pen. Like, I just do. I can't explain it, but I get through things through music. It's just how and I know artists say that all the time, but it's really a real thing. Like, like, my wife will ask me 10 times in one day, like, what's wrong with you? And I'll say nothing, and really be trying to say that. Like, inside I'm boiling up and I'm trying to figure out how to tell her without, scaring her or hurting her, but I can't get the words out. And then I'll come down here for an hour or two, and there'll be 3 verses written in a half hour, and I've recorded a song, and I come back upstairs smiling like, I don't know what happened, but you can go downstairs and listen. And so Mark giving me that outlet was something I didn't even know I needed. But by the time I graduated, I had the Chronicles written. So my album was my first little release was called The Chronicles. Okay. And I had that written by the time I graduated the program.
Wow.
And so Matt Barber, who's the director of the program now, he actually, so my first 3 projects I put out were all free download projects, and he designed all the covers for them, like, to help me kind of get started. He's the one that started my Twitter account, like, so that I knew, because I'm in the program for a year. I have no idea how things work. Right. I know people say a year is not that long, but with technology, it actually really, really is.
When was that? Was that 10 years ago?
Yeah. Well, I went into the program September 2010. I graduated September 2011.
Yeah. Like, I was right around the peak of social media coming out and all that.
Right. So yeah, Matt got me set up with all of that stuff. And then we just started putting out music, like just putting out free music. I knew in my heart that my thing was going to be, I wanted to share this new thing I had, but I'm also one of those work smart, not hard kind of people. So I was like, I don't want to just individually have to have this conversation with 100 people. Let me see if I can get 100 people in a room at one time and give it to them that way. Right. And so I really started pushing for this thing. And so, yeah, that's the nuts and bolts of my testimony from where I'm from to how we launched.
This is a beautiful story, man. Like, you hear in that, like, I hear so much about, like, when I hear your story, like, it makes me on the one hand really just enjoy you and your journey, but more than that, like, as any good testimony should, like, it should make us just say, like, how good is God, that he pursued you that whole time. He knew how to speak your language. He knew how to set you up. And the coolest thing I was thinking as you were talking about is, like, and maybe it's because of the name, like 180, but doesn't God, when he gets a hold of us, yes, he transforms us, but at the same time, it's more like he gets a hold of us and he changes the direction we're going, and he allows us to still be us, the us that he made, and it's like you went from propagating this message to propagating a different message, and still using the same talents and outlets that he designed you to use. And I've always said that, like, I think about my life, or you think about like a guy like Paul in the New Testament, like, he was a proficient leader at being a jerk.
Yeah.
And then God gets a hold of him, and he's this proficient leader in building the church, right? It's like, I think God designs us with the full intention of getting a hold of us and setting us on a certain path.
100%.
We just come to life in that. And I just hear that so much in your story, like just even that quick little synopsis of just how
Yeah.
just set you up for that moment. Yeah, you had to listen though. You had to respond. Now, he was very gracious in giving you the full, multiple layered, hey, you're going to Teen Challenge. You're going to go to Teen Challenge. You're going to need to go to Teen Challenge. But he is very gracious.
Yeah. And I think in that though was how I learned to, like, there's a lot of, even 10 years later, like there's a lot of value parts to that I still use. I don't argue with God like I used to, man. Like,
right.
I don't have to like it or agree. I just know that at this point now, if I say yes, then good. It's a lot easier than if I say no, because you're going to do things now that are going to cause me to have to, I always say that to people, like, for a lot of people, they say, once they started following Christ, it was the best thing that ever happened to them. For me, it became a ton of stress, because now I'm like, I know you're going to get your way. And I might not like a lot of this stuff, man. Like a lot of things you're about to, like my last album has a song on it called Have Mercy. And that song all came from a place of me struggling with pornography, and putting my marriage in jeopardy behind it, and like I talk about it freely now because I've seen the impact that the song has had on people. But before that, that was scary, man. Like that was, like I had a mentor of mine actually say to me, he said, like, Tia, I just want you to know, like, I appreciate what you're doing with this song, but you need to know that there's going to be some people who you don't expect who are going to turn their backs on you. Yeah. There's going to be some people you don't expect who are going to come alongside of you and rock with you because of this, He said, but you need to be prepared for both, and I valued that. That to me was now one of the biggest statements ever. Like I actually had a pastor tell me, like, I can't believe I ever allowed you on my pulpit. And I'm like, whoa, like that's a big hit, man. Like, but thankful to that brother, I was prepared for that conversation. And I just said, thank you for your opinion. That you have the right to feel that way, man. And I'm praying for you and your congregation. Yeah. Because I guarantee there's some fellas sitting in your pews right now that might need you to answer that a little differently. But you have your right to that. And so I was able to kind of navigate that. But I say all that just to say that, the whole reason that song came about was I was mixing a project for another artist, and I froze up. Like I got blocked. And I have a 15-minute rule, where if I'm trying to create and it's not coming, I'll just walk away for 15 minutes, man. Go pray, I'll go play a video game, whatever. Just walk away from it. Yeah. And so in this particular time, I walked away and I, went and sat and I was in prayer, and I just felt God. And I'm not one of those people that's like, God talks to me audibly and all of that. I believe it happens, but just not with me, and I remember sitting down and I was just praying, and I heard God say, you got to go talk about that, man. Wow. Like he said, and after I heard that, like, and I actually heard it, like it wasn't just a thought. Like I felt like somebody else was in the room, man, which was two-sided for me. Like sometimes when God has to slap me with something, he does it in a way that it awes me, because he already knows I trust him and believe him, but he also knows that there's, again, like you said earlier, like he knows how to deal with us individually. That's right. And for me, like, I feel things in my spirit, but like to do something that's really, really uncomfortable, he's got to come at me a little differently. It's got to be in a way where I'm like, whoa, okay, that's definitely you. I'm not going to mess with that. Let's just go do it. And so
he's disruptive,
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think you're telling me though, like you've been obedient enough times and pressed through that. Like
I've seen some stuff.
Yeah, but you've pushed through that terrifying moment of putting that out there just because he told you to do that, and like even counting the cost of there's gonna be some people turn on me through this, but at the same time have seen how, one of the things I was just saying this to a friend today, where Jesus says, anyone who come after me must, take up his cross and follow me. And then he talks about how, anybody building before he does the project counts the cost. And when Jesus invites us to count the cost, he actually does want us to do the math on it's going to cost me something to be obedient to him, whether it's putting on the slacks 4 days a week and going to Teen Challenge for a year, or whether it's putting out that song about pornography and the real struggle that frankly, like every dude in every church at some level, whether it's overt online pornography or it's just like checking out a girl at the gym, like don't even tell me that
Right.
pastor who kicked you off his stage doesn't have his own set of temptations. And
well, it's funny, man. Like, it's funny. I went back to my mentor on that, and he said, like, we actually have to pray for this man more than we ever did. He said, because I kind of feel like it might be something that he's, and I was like, I didn't even look at it like that, but it allowed me to show so much grace because, and I don't have a choice but to show grace, because at this point, man, if you listen to my music, that's what I'm coming for, man. Like, I need it, because,
I think if you ever get in that zone where we're not, if you don't see yourself in someone else's struggle, and like where it's like, but for the grace of God, there go I, you're just in a dangerous zone.
Yeah.
But all that to say about counting the cost, like he wants you to do the math to know that, like, think about it. Yeah, it's going to cost me something to put that out there, but it's going to cost me more if I don't. Yeah, it's going to cost me something to go to Teen Challenge, but it's going to cost me more if I don't. And like the return on the investment is just always better paying the price to follow Jesus than it is to stay stuck in your ways or what have you. So
it's crazy that you say that, man. It's crazy that you say that, because that song, Have Mercy, is my third most successful single,
I bet,
that I've ever put out. And it was a struggle to do it. Like, I wrote it and then I didn't record it. I'm being obedient. You said I have to write it. I wrote it. Lord, now leave me alone. It's like when you tell your kids to go clean their room, right? And they move everything into the closet. Hey, it's clean. Right. So I was like, I'm good. I'm done. And then it was, all right, well, record it. And then I did that. And then he took it a step further and was like, I felt it strong on my spirit. You gotta shoot a video for that one. It's like, you gotta be kidding me. So we did. And like, to this day, like it's in my top 3 most successful singles, like streaming wise and sales wise and all of that, like of anything I've put out.
I think, and you're just the tip of the spear on, I think God wants to mobilize authoritative voices and frankly fathers in the church to deal with, especially that issue of pornography that frankly our generation has had to deal with, like sexual temptation in ways that no generation ever has. And frankly, we need to get victory and walk in that for our sons and our sons' sons. And so like, this is the time I think God's going to flip the shades on all of it. And I think we need to embrace his, not just his desire to reveal it, what's going on behind the scenes, but his desire to heal it and to actually give us some victory, whether that's through supernatural touch, accountability, whatever. Like,
yeah, when one of my pastors started actually telling me some numbers, and when he was telling me the numbers, he was also saying that I'm being very generous as I say this, and I remembered having that conversation, and I actually got mad. I was like, so why isn't this more of a topic that we cover? Because like, I've been going through this for years by myself because I felt so much shame behind it, because I was, it's not something that we talk about or deal with. Like and so I'm always one of those people, man, that like, I'm nervous about some of the things God's going to ask me when I get to heaven and how I handled said situations. And some of them are stuff you're going to notice. So this is one of those for me. This is one of those, you have an opportunity now. If it upset you so bad that nobody talked about it and you went through it and felt by yourself, what's your response? What are you going to do? Right. And so,
I applaud you, man. And I think that's on the heart of God in this time, that he's going to call more and more voices in the church, guys like me, guys like you, to press through the fear of it and actually just, let's talk about the elephant in the room that's affecting 99.9% of the dudes in here and probably 50% of the women at this stage in the game. So let's just, and it's huge, man. But so like along those lines, I wanted to ask you about, you're not somebody who's a stranger to having to put yourself out there in a place where it's like, hey, this is me. And I'm not even like, I hate the term, like I'm being true to myself. Like it's deeper than that. You're being true to who God's called you and created you to be. And that's put you in some spots. Like I think about, seen you rap at like in the Beulah Tabernacle, being like the only black guy in the whole room, rapping. Yep. There's people there that want to hear the Southern gospel. And it's like, I just admire, and I've always thought of that about you, is like, I just admire your conviction to not just be obedient to who God made you to be, but like, this is who I am. This is what I got. And I'm going to use it for his glory. And it's really not whether about, it's a room full of black people who are like right in tune with me or not. I'm not doing this necessarily primarily for you.
Right.
And that's been so evident, man, especially because I've caught you in some of those streams where it's like, I'm sure it'd be easier to rap in a club or in a place where people are getting, and I'm sure that it just flow a lot better, but God's called him to this stage for whatever reason, and he's owning it. And I've just thought, man, I just admire that about you. What's your process? How have you formed that? Like, God, wherever you go, whatever door you open for me, I'm going to walk through it.
It's funny that you even say that, because like, I even use it in job interviews where somebody will say like, what are you, cause I do sales, right? So how do we know that you will be a good salesperson with us? Listen, man, I'm a Christian hip hop artist in Atlantic, Canada.
There you go. There. Nice.
Like, I'll wait for your call. Yeah. But yeah, that is a little bit, that's a little bit easier to answer. I mean, the answer is not going to be politically or church correct, I guess, if the term is correct. But honestly, I grew up with a fascination of mob movies and mobsters and mafia figures. Grew up on it, loved it. Like, still to this day, I'll watch a mob movie over anything else on TV, right? Like, but what I got from that was, again, you don't always have to agree, but you have to do what's the best thing for the family. And this is no different for me. This is exactly how I approach this. Like, it might not be the most comfortable thing for me, but this is the lane that God's called me into, and it's the best thing for the family at that time. So when you talk about like the Beulah Tabernacle, and you talk about some of those small churches and youth groups of 5 and 10 people, when you talk about that, like, I look back now and I say, like, that was all God preparing and using me for such a time as this right now. Because now, when we're in a situation where churches and the Beulah Tabernacle and predominantly white churches and all of that, during the season that we're just fighting through right now, people were willing to listen to me because that groundwork was already done.
Yes.
Of me knocking that wall down in those places, where, now I have a voice to be able to say, okay, well, let me come and share my perspective here. Let me share my experience, because you know me, you love me, you know who I am. You've heard my story. You know where this is coming from. You know it's authentic. So now that we have that opportunity, you don't have to go to CNN. You don't have to go to Fox. You don't have to go to anywhere else. Yep. I'm going to come to you, and I know we can have that conversation because we've already laid that groundwork. That foundation's already there. And so at the time, of course, it can be hard. It can be exhausting. I'm pretty sure I've tried to retire from hip hop music 3 times, but at the same time, like, now when I look back, like, and it's really just been this season when I've looked back, I'm like, man, like, I get it. So I can't lie to you and say that the whole way through it's been, I know, God, what you're doing, and I know that it's going to be, but right now I'm the most comfortable I've ever been in terms of, having the ability to look at, social injustice and look at, where our society is, and to speak on it honestly. I've never felt safer to do that, because I know that people aren't going to take it as an attack. It's actually, oh, that's 180, man. Like, that's that guy who stood at that table with me for an hour and prayed for my grandson.
Right.
Like that. Oh, that's that guy. Like, he's not what I see on TV.
Yep.
So if it's happening to him, this is a real thing.
That's right. Yeah.
So like I remembered the round table you had with Pastor Leonard and you had Jeremiah and you had
Matt.
yeah, like that for me, I was like, that is so huge
Mm.
because inside some of those churches, you know, people know Leonard as the charismatic open black pastor, you know.
Right.
But to see him on there speaking, like those are heroes of mine. Like, you know what I mean? Those are people who will step out because of the not at risk of the platform they have, but because of the platform they have, will step out. And I never got a chance to tell you, man, but thank you. I'm trying not to get emotional, but thank you for doing that. I know that a lot of people felt like they had to. And I know a lot of people were making decisions because it was the right thing to do, but it was also still scary and difficult. And man, like, I just got to tell you, man, I was at the cottage, bro. I got a data bill that would blow your mind. I was actually at Beulah when I was watching that.
Oh, buddy. Like that was a special thing for me too. Like it was, you know, for me, I didn't feel like I had to do it in the sense of a political sense. It was a pastoral thing that I got, I was seeing people comment on the George Floyd and what went down, and seeing people in my own church, which is predominantly white. We have quite a few like African families,
Yep.
but not a ton of black people that have just grown up here in Atlanta, Canada.
Right.
But I've been fortunate enough to have relationships and people I call friends that are black, and like I'm sitting here like on social media and stuff contrasting, Matt Thomas and Leonard and Bradford and what they're saying is real to them with some of my white, congregants and friends who are like, we don't know, what went on before George Floyd died, and like defending this.
Right.
I was like, man, there's a gap here. And it's ignorance that the relationship hasn't been they don't know any black people. So to your point, it's like when these conversations start happening, you've already broken through and built a bridge. And now we're in a position to, it's like, I know Tia. Yeah. And if he says this hurts, then it hurts.
Right.
I don't have to understand it. I understand him.
It's one of those things when you're in a relationship with anybody, man, and they're doing something wrong and you want to address it. You kind of need permission for that. There has to be a trust level there. Right. You know what I mean? To be able to have the openness to go ahead and say, so I had my tour manager, Ted, one time I was sharing, we were on tour and I did my testimony in one place. And the next night we were going to the next place. And on the way, he actually looked over at me. He's like, can I tell you something? I was like, yeah. He's like, you're not going to like it. I was like, all right, go ahead. He has that permission because of our relationship. Right. He just said, man, when you're sharing your testimony, it almost seems there's one part there where it just seems like you're glorifying the wrong things. And I was like, dude, thank you.
Yeah.
Didn't want to hear it.
Yeah.
Didn't want to hear it because I've been telling my testimony the same way for a decade, but he had that permission and was comfortable to do that. I feel like at this point in my career, if you will, or in my ministry, I've been blessed to develop that permission.
Yeah.
To say, okay, well, this is something that I can address. So going back to your question on how I accept the things that God tells me to just go do and just go do them. It's just that, man. Like I trust that he's going to be honest in his word. I don't question that at all. And I just believe that at the end of the day, if I do what he asks me to do, it's like you said earlier, the return is going to be great. And I don't have to worry about that. And so, yeah, that's pretty much what it is. And now, like I said, looking back, I believe that it was, it was all of that stuff, going into those small places or going into places where it was awkward even walking to the stage, I know what it was for now. And I look at too, like some of it, my biggest wins, like, okay, yeah, people coming to the altar and accepting the Lord, of course, that's the peak, that's the pinnacle. But I did a show in St. John, one night, and I finished the show and I was back at the table and I was doing the merch thing, and because that's my favorite place to be after a show is with the people, right? So I'm back at the table, and a little lady, like she was in her 80s, and like when I tell you that her in height, she just came up to the top of where my stomach is.
Oh,
right. Right. And she grabs me by the arm and she looks up at me like that, and she says, she goes, "Young man, I didn't understand a word you said." And I'm like, "Oh boy, here we go." Right? I'm like, here we go. She said, "But I knew, I could feel that you just loved the Lord and you were just worshiping the Lord up there. So you just keep doing what you're doing." And bro, that for me was so huge, man. Like that was, because ultimately that was God's way of telling me, you just go.
Yeah.
Go do it. I'll take care of the rest. You don't, it's not free. That extra stuff isn't for you to worry about. And again, the mafia stuff is one thing, but it's also the Teen Challenge model too.
Yeah.
Like one of the things I learned my first week in Teen Challenge was the director at the time was Remy Legacy, man. And Remy just told me point blank, "You're not here to change Teen Challenge. It's here to change you." And that was it. So you're going to do things like that I tell you because I tell you, and you're going to do them, you know, and the end game, the end result, you might not see it at the time. Like I'll share this because I just actually shared it with a Teen Challenge student a couple weeks ago. Was that like my last 2 months in the program were absolute hell. And no, I didn't use the wrong word. It's exactly what it was, right? Because Remy set out to make it miserable for me, but for a reason that he wouldn't tell me until afterwards. And what it was I'm about to graduate this program, go back out into the world. And, you know, I got a bunch of scripture memorized. I know how to love people, but my anger is still a huge problem and I can't figure that out. And so what he would do was he would just do stupid little nitpicky things to me, right? Like one day, like you're only allowed to have one coffee, right? And everybody gets the same size mug or whatever, right? And he came into the cafeteria and he took my mug and he just said, like, "Your mug's too big. You got the wrong size mug." And took my coffee, right? So I go upstairs completely ruined for the day now in my head, right? Like I'm angry now. Like I'm just, you know, but at about 10 o'clock that morning, like we're sitting through chapel and I realize, like, why am I even mad? Like it's a coffee, man. Like I'm gonna get another one tomorrow. He didn't take away my snacks. And at the time that was my most important part of the program was snack time. So it's like, he didn't mess with that. Like, you know, like why am I angry? You know? And so I started working on those things myself without even realizing what it was. And now I know some people will be like, well, I mean, is that necessarily the right approach? Listen, man, when my father passed away right before I went into the program, and Remy sat down with me and told me that, of course, he can't replace my father, but I'd never feel like I didn't have one.
Wow.
And he stood behind that all the time. Remy's the first person to put his foot in my butt when I do wrong, even now to this day. He's also still the first person to call me and tell me he's proud of me for something that I did too. You know what I mean? And so even through all that, right? Like stuff's happening and he's really grinding me, you know, but I'm learning so much because I'm walking away, I'm dealing with it. And by the end of the day, sometimes it takes longer than others, but by the end of the day, I'm coming out and I'm just like, well, was that even worth it? Like, was that a reason to be angry? Like, you know what I mean? Like there's different stuff, you know, like there's stuff to actually be angry about.
Yeah.
Us 2 sips of coffee isn't it? Right. You know? And so, yeah, like but that was the model of Teen Challenge, especially even at that time. Like it's a lot more, there's a lot more ability to deal with internal stuff in the program now than there was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, it was pray about it and deal with it. Go. You know, now they work through stuff, which I'm super grateful for. But at the time, the way the program was designed was what I needed.
Yeah.
And I needed him to be that way with me, man, because he laid the groundwork to have permission.
Right.
We started out with, you know, your father's gone and I can't replace him.
Yeah.
But you'll never be without one. That was the foundation. So then when he took my coffee, shoot, I can get over that, man, because I know you love me. right? I know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
And so that program was a lot of why I kind of, because like some of the crazy rules, like if your bed wasn't made properly, you get a discipline ticket, right? Like if you're 30 seconds late for one of the programs that you're supposed to be in, you get a ticket for that. Like, so I just learned to accept things that even though they don't make sense to me, or even if I think they're dumb, right? Like you just go ahead and do it. So there's things that I'll never sit here and call God dumb, but there's things that he'll ask me to do, and I'm like, I really feel like that. I know you're in charge, but I feel like that's a waste of my time.
Yeah. Man, if
but okay.
how true have you found, like, if you find yourself in a place where you need to be humbled, submissive, and surrendered, you are probably on the right track of God doing something great in you or for you or through you. Yeah. It's unfortunate. It hurts. It's hard every time, but it's like, it's almost like an indicator, right? Like if I'm feeling like I got to be humble right now, it's probably an indication that God's at work. Or if I feel like I got to like give up my right to be right now, or like die to self right now, there's probably it should be a flashing light saying, yeah, God is about to, as you stand down.
I don't know though. Even if we had the flashing light, it would still suck. I don't know if it would make it easier for me, even with the flashing light.
I mean, you still gotta do it, but at least like there's like an indicator. It's an indicator light saying, hey, this is what's going on behind here. Hang in there.
Yeah,
man, that's so good. Hey, I want two more like topics of conversation question.
Yeah,
I want to hear about what's give me the rundown on the album Ventilation 2. When we're done, I'm going to play first track off of that. People can hear that. And where can they find your website, find you on iTunes? I know that for sure.
Yeah. So anywhere you listen to music, it's all there. You can get it there. And all of my social media. So if you look, the name is spelled there on the bottom there.
For listeners, it's one, like, the word 1-8 and then the number 8 and then T, like as in TEA.
Yeah. So One8tea. Yeah. So
really, really good music, man.
So that album, man, like, so Ventilation 1 was actually the start of something that I had no idea I was going to be starting. Like I said, like that, the first Ventilation actually started with the Have Mercy song.
Okay.
It was never intended to be an album, but then the song took off, and I'm just like, well, I'm also a business person in my head too, and I should probably capitalize on this and put an album out. And so, but the idea of that album was I wanted to talk about, so Ventilation 1, I wanted to talk about all of the things that, over my music career, if you will, I've been very conscious and mindful about not saying the wrong thing. Very much making music for my audience, and you don't do that intentionally all the time, and you don't necessarily realize it, but it happens, man. And I started looking back at some of my music, and I'm like, I don't talk about, there's nowhere in my other songs where I talk about failing as a father, because I've done that. Why won't I share that? I've never talked about the pornography stuff. Why? You know what I mean? Like all the stuff that I've never talked about being black in North America. Like, you know what I mean? Because I don't want to offend anybody or upset anybody or anything like that. And then it just came about that, like with the first Ventilation, I was like, I've been trying to be done doing this, so there's nothing to say to hold in the tank, man. So I'm just going to vent, man. Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and say all the stuff that I always wanted to say. I'm going to get it off my chest. I'm going to, I'm going to speak to the people outside of the building, but also really speak to the people in it too, and it's going to, some of it's going to be painful. Some of it's going to be aggressive, some of it's going to be just, look, man, here's my issue, man. Here's what I've done. Here's what I'm doing right now. And some of it'll also even be a bit of an argument with God, like on the song Ventilation, on Ventilation 1, like that whole song is me upset with God and telling him that I'm upset with him. Like, I know you said this, but this is what I'm seeing.
Right.
What are you doing?
Which the crazy, I mean, that's such an important thing though, man. Like the people that, especially like the people of God, need authenticity. We could have a whole conversation about the culture and the world that we live in, I think there's a time where there's an appetite for truth like no time in like at least yours and my lifetime. But within the church, like just that need for authenticity, and how often do we get caught? Just like you said, because I recognize exactly what you're saying as a preacher, that there's a lot of times where I'm tempted to preach a message of what I think you want to hear or what I think you need to hear. The best ones and the ones that have been the most anointed have been the ones I just got to get off my chest. Right. Like it's just something that God's done in me or saying to me. And I just like, whether this helps you or not, I'm going to let it rip. And I found that resonates with people way more.
Well, even like the way both of these albums have come about. So Ventilation 2, I'll go to that really quick. So Ventilation 2, that album actually came off of the heels of me writing a song called I Guess It's Complicated, which was a song that, again, it was after, the George Floyd stuff happened. And I got on to, I did an interview conversation with Pastor Pat at my church. We did it online and all of that. And that was good. And, but one of the things that I said, and I firmly stand behind this, even though it's exhausting, is that, if we're going to tell people that we want them to listen to us, then we have to be willing to have the conversation.
That's wisdom.
And so I just, again, I'm like, okay, well, rather than talk to 100 individual people, how can I do this in a way where it says everything I need to say and gets the point across? And so I wrote this song, man. I was down here and I was kind of trying to work through the George Floyd stuff. And my wife, again, like she's just such a special person where like stuff like that, she'll give me my space to just deal. Like I knew she was emotional. She was hurting for me, but she didn't understand it. And in that moment, I needed to be understood, not so much consoled, and I wasn't going to go outside of my house to go get that either. So it was kind of a weird position for her to be in,
right? Because
she wants to console me. And I'm like, that's not what I need right now. Right now, I just need to scream and I need to be understood, but I need people to know that this screaming isn't necessarily coming from a place of anger. It's in there. But I'm hurt, man. Like I'm broken. I feel like every couple of weeks I don't even have time to mourn these brothers that I'm seeing getting killed in the street because I got to go ahead and get ready for the next one because it's coming, and that's heavy. So I came downstairs, man, and I was just crying. Like I was actually bawling. And what I was doing, I was watching YouTube videos of the reactions. And basically what was happening, what I was seeing was the world was burning down is what I was watching. Like that's how I was reading it, right? The world was burning down. And I found myself in a place of, I didn't know if I disliked it or was okay with it. Like I didn't know where this was the first time in my life that I couldn't pinpoint what side I landed on something, whether right or wrong. I couldn't put and even internally, because I won't always voice where I land on things. But in this one, even personally, if I was to ask myself, am I okay with everything being on fire right now? I couldn't give myself a definite answer for that. And that was breaking me even more. I was like, am I at a place now where I'm so broken behind this now that like even the bad things that are happening behind this thing, I'm okay with? Like, is that where I am now? Because that's also not a place where I want to be, So I'm dealing with all of that. And again, God being as great as he is, just started giving me words, man. And I just started writing. Like I just started writing. I didn't have the beat for it or anything like that. I just started writing words down, man. And so like, I wish I had it with me, man. I'll actually send it to you on Instagram or something. But like, I've got a bunch of little pieces of paper because that song didn't even come together. It was just like, I'd be sitting here and I'd write something down, get it off your chest. Boom. Now move it aside. Right. I actually learned that in a church. I was at Sun Life Community Church in Dartmouth, man. I remember being there. And that was one of the things the pastor did that Sunday was write this thing you're carrying down. I know you've seen the illustration. Write this thing down that you're carrying, bring it up here. We're going to pin it to this tree or whatever. And it's gone. So it's a habit. I get into it every once in a while. So I started doing that. I'd write, boom. Okay. Get rid of that. Boom. Get rid of that. Boom. Get rid of that. And then I started looking at like, well, wait a minute. Like, how am I going to now help somebody else? Because now I'm in two places, right? I've got the Black community um, who I'm a part of, man, and I'm hurting for us, and I'm just as angry as you are, and I'm trying to work this thing out, man, and make it make sense to me. And then on the other side, I have an open door to the white ear that a lot of us don't.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, what do I do in this situation? Because really, and I remember Matt Thomas saying it, like, really, no, I don't want to talk about this with you right now.
Yeah.
But I know I have to, you know?
For sure.
And so anyway, I went back and I was going through, I go beach shopping once a week, no matter what. Mm-hmm. My wife hates that because I also have a huge appetite for sneakers. And so the fact that I'm looking at $300 instrumentals at the same time is very frustrating for her, right? But I do every week. And I was sitting there and this instrumental started and it had the sample in it where it said, "It's complicated. I shouldn't ever have to feel this way. Every time I try to walk away, you're going to have to learn to love me better." Right? And I was just like, oh man, like that is saying, it was saying so much to me that I kept repeating it. You're just going to have to learn to love me better. And I meant that for all of us as a community. Right. Yeah. And my next thing was, okay, well, if I'm going to put that on somebody, well, if I'm telling you have to learn to do something, then I have to teach you how to do it. Mm-hmm. Right. Like, you know, I value that in men, especially. I value that. I love it when a brother comes alongside of me and says, look, I coach basketball. I love it when I tell one of the kids to do something and I actually get on the floor with them. The look on their face that they give you as you're going through that. I mean, you're a leader, man. So when you get beside somebody, it's way different than getting in front of them and telling them something. Getting beside them is way different, man. When they come into your office and you sit in a chair directly with them, man, and they can see your eyes, like, you know. So I was just like, yo, this thing is really talking to me. So I went back and I started grabbing those little pieces of paper, man, because at the time it wasn't a song. It was just this topic. Boom, get it off. Boom. So if you listen to that song, you'll see that it covers so much in such a short little bit of time because they were all different emotions I was going through while I'm sitting here watching YouTube videos and crying and being angry and so on and so on and so on, right? And so they all ended up coming together for that song. But then again, I put the song out and there were people, again, like even from my own church that were reaching out to me who, you know, like I'll share this. There was one guy, I won't say his name because that's not fair, but there was one guy who I was convinced that I'm the token black guy he knows. Like 100%. No knock on him. He was never mean to me. I just didn't trust that if there was a situation and he was in a circle and somebody was saying something about me, that I didn't trust he'd stop it.
Right. Right.
But he called me after that song came out and he called me on the phone and he was just crying, man. And he was just like, man, he said, I feel like I've offended you. And I'm like, bro, like, listen, you know enough about me to know that if you ever did, I would tell you. Mm. You know what I mean? Like I have the gift and the curse of being able to move on. Like that's kind of my thing, man. Like, you know, we don't have to I can love you from over here. You know what I mean? Like we don't have to be like this. Right. And so when we got into this conversation and he was just telling me how that song moved him and he just felt the need to call and apologize for if he's ever, and I was just like, okay, this thing has legs, right? Because God was teaching me something about this man that was total opposite of what I thought of him, you know. So it wasn't just for him or for the people that were about to hear it. God started building something for me too, where it was, all right, now because you do some of exactly what you're saying in this song.
Right.
Right. You know, like some of why you're upset about a lot of this is because it actually makes really good sense to you. And you know why? It makes good sense because you can relate to it, you know, on the other side. Right. And so that really was one of those things where I was like, all right, well, here we are, you know. And then I also said, like, this is an opportunity for me to take this topic of injustice and how the church deals with it, because I got to be honest with you, man, for the most part, I felt like we really struck out, you know, and I was like, but at the same time, I didn't want that to be a condemning thing. I didn't want it to come across like we struck out because we weren't swinging. We struck out because I feel like we were unprepared. And that's something that's on us, but that's on all of us. You know what I mean? That's a everybody issue, you know? Yeah. And I felt like we weren't ready to deal with the people hurting on this subject, because we're so mission focused outside of our area or outside of that we don't stop enough to see that the guy next to me is actually hurting and could use my mission work right here, right now. Like the whole reason I do my ministry in Canada, mostly, like I've had opportunities to go cross border and all of that, but like Pastor Buckingham, Pastor B, the legend, actually took me aside. I remember when I first started doing this, and I remember going into his office, and you're going to laugh at me, but it's okay. You can do it this time. I went into his office and I sat down with him, and he still laughs about it too, I sat down with him and I said, you know, Pastor, I know what I know, but I don't know if I'm actually saved. Right. And he was like, which was a genuine question for me at the time. So bear with me. You do get the laugh. Right. Yeah. It's a genuine question at the time. And he said, why do you say that? And I said, well, I have zero desire to go on a mission trip. And I'm pretty sure that's how it works. Like you accept the Lord, and then you go on a mission trip. Now you're saved. Right. And he said to me, do you ever notice how your eyes light up when somebody mentions youth in Canada? I was like, yeah, young man, that's your mission field. Yeah, go do it. Right. And I was just like that gave me a certain level of freedom to go, right? Like, because I've always viewed him just as a hero to me, man. Like, and I know I'm preaching to the choir. It's the same for a lot of us, right? But that was, hearing that from him was huge. And then Jay Muir was the other one, man. Jay came to me and was like, I'm putting you on stage. And I was like, not that one, you're not. Right? He was, oh yeah, we're doing it, right? And what people don't know, I've told Jay, but what people don't know is while I was in Teen Challenge, there were two things that I spoke that I didn't know God was going to do, man, but it was important for me to know that God was listening. One of them was I was going to meet Fresh IE, who's the guy that signed me to my first Christian label, Kingdom Music. I'm wearing the hoodie now. So Fresh IE, I saw him in a magazine. I was like, I'm going to meet him. Secondly, our home church at the time was Moncton Wesleyan, and I said, I'm going to perform on that stage, right? Like I was like, I'm going to do that. And God saw both of those through. So when we talk about when you follow him and you serve him, the fact that his word does say that he wants to honor the desires of your heart, he did that for me. I don't have any arguments there as far as he goes. But yeah, this whole album became that, man. It became another vent session. It became here's how I'm dealing with what's going on, man. And I went out and I got poetry onto this one, man, like just so that you could hear it in spoken word versions. And, you know, and we talked, I wanted to share with people that God was way bigger than all of the stuff that's happening around us, because it is happening and we can't deny that.
That's right.
But at the end of the day, God is so much bigger than it. So there's a song on there just called Bigger Than, that it was really just about that. And then the Jesus Is song is probably one of my favorites on the whole project, just because, again, like that, the guy who produced that instrumental and that sample is saying Jesus is. So let's put that into consideration real quick. The guy who produced that beat, I did dirt with him before ever becoming saved. And now he's producing beats that say Jesus is. And I didn't ask for that beat. He sent it to me. Hey, brother, you think you could use this to the glory of God? Those were his words.
That's awesome, man.
You know? And
right.
So again, coming back to the whole, you know, taking off the, you know, doing things for people to receive rather than actually just doing them to glorify God and getting it off my chest. Those two projects are my most successful albums.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. And Ventilation too, like that thing hit #1 on iTunes, man, in Canada. And that's my first #1. Like, it's awesome again.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks, man. And I always tell people, like, the reason that these albums, the Ventilation series is happening now, because I retired after Reverence. So these are all borrowed time ones, man. And I'm just letting it all out now.
Playing with house money.
Yeah.
That's so good, man. It's like you're a huge encouragement, and I honor you. And the album's killer, dude. Like I bumped it at the gym the other day, and it was it's awesome. So people got to check it out. One more just important question, topic of conversation.
Yeah.
See the Lakers jerseys behind your head.
100%.
You're a Lakers fan, so you're feeling good right now.
I feel great. I feel absolutely terrific. I feel like we're going after another one.
I think it's locked.
Yeah.
I hate to see that.
I feel really, really good about it. I mean, so I'm a 2-team guy. So just so that we're clear, okay. I'm a Raptor guy and I'm a Laker guy. So here's the thing: I've been a Laker guy since Showtime. So since Magic and those guys were just killing the league, like that's when I first became a Laker fan. And then Kobe came along, and I was just blown away by him. But I'm a Raptor fan because I'm Canadian, first of all, and like there's a certain attitude about that team, man, about that organization, and who that, like I love it. I thrive on it. Like just that we're just gonna Masai Ujiri does things that, man, you just don't do them, and he does them, and they work out. And I'm just like, I love that attitude. Like that's the kind of person I want to be. I'm just gonna do it because I think it's right. And then we'll see we'll let it play out, you know.
They do represent Canada well in that kind of gritty sort of lunch pail. I don't need to talk about it. I'm just going to show up and play. You know, Kyle Lowry kind of sets the pace with that, man. So
all-time greatest Raptor, man. I don't care what anyone says. I'll fight anybody about it.
Facts. We are in 100% agreement there. A buddy of mine actually had Rob Pelinka. He interviewed Rob Pelinka last week for his podcast.
Oh, that's awesome!
Right? Yeah, it's pretty cool. Cool. So well, we'll have to get out on court sometime, and
man, yeah.
So,
I saw you played with a few buddies of mine too up there. So
yeah,
I saw you posted something with Dwayne Marcial and a couple other people, and I was playing ball. I was like, Dwayne actually, when I was doing secular hip hop, Dwayne was my manager.
DJ Slim.
Yeah.
The one I was he was on my team when we won. Well, we're still the reigning St. John Masters champions. So because we never finished last season, it got destroyed because of COVID. So we still retained the belt, and Dwayne was on that team. So it's good fun, man. Dwayne and just a bunch of good guys on that group. So yeah, man. Well, hey, you have been a ton of fun to talk to. Somehow we just flew through like almost 90 minutes, like no problem at all. So we'll have to do this again sometime. And,
absolutely, man.
And we're gonna play one of your songs on the way out for people to hear, and then I would encourage people to go check out 180 stuff online, iTunes, on YouTube.
Yep.
YouTube, Spotify, MySpace.
You name it, I'm there. I just got a notification that the album's on Napster, bro. So, like, I'm saying.
Napster. There we go. Yeah. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you being willing to jump on here today. And I'm excited for what God's done in your life. And I think there's much more yet to come. So
yeah, man, 100% appreciate being on here, man. Like this has been the highlight of this album tour, I guess, if you will. This is huge, man. Like I'm a huge respecter of you, Brent. Like I mean that, like big time. Like I follow what you do and I watch, and you're a great example to us who are out here, you know, just trying to serve the King, man. And I'm grateful for your leadership, even if it's from afar, man. So just wanted to share that with you.
Likewise, feel the same. Thanks, brother.
All right, brother.
Me and hey everybody, have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We will see you in 2021.
stand before you this morning, an imperfect person loved by a perfect God. And that there is a perfect love for imperfect people.
I take a look at where I come from, giving thanks when I wake up. Brought you stories for a decade, some stuff I couldn't make up. I came in for the shake up, as if I had a choice. Had to bust the current state up and make a bit of noise. I started from the bottom, but my God, he had a vision. Find these people stuck in shackles, help them get up out of prison. Tell them about your addictions and all of your heart afflictions. Be bold about your faith and stand strong in your convictions. No need to be afraid or concerned how you'll get paid. I brought you up out the grave, so don't worry, my boy, you're safe. You told me I could send you, so I'm hoping you're packed. And when they ask you how you got there, you can tell them in fact, yeah.
On the inside, not just action but attitude, not just conduct but character, because a tree is known by the fruit it bears, and you will never produce fruit if you don't address the
I've been to places unimagined, so many I couldn't fathom. Met people from different races and gave you a couple anthems. Made music you could play with the whole family around. I kept it real about the message, never toning it down. Gave all the glory straight to God for all of the accolades. He helped me through all my valleys and all of my happy days. My life has been blessed, no material needed. He brought me a long way, saw me struggling and defeated. Expectations been exceeded, he got it and I proceeded. That formula stayed repeated, eventually I succeeded. Spoke a language that's consistent with exactly where our youth is. And I can't take any credit, cause honestly the truth is,
God really is. If you want to have a sneak peek into his heart, if you want to experience his warm embrace, if you want to understand and stand under his unconditional love, please don't look at the display of his just wrath or his cosmic power by